Oh, hold on. Breathing again.
I pressed
Hold on.
record.
That's right.
Too soon. Okay. So we are in recording number 2. I am so excited. For those of you guys who are just jumping in the first time to see both of us give a little chat about consciousness, enlightenment, and all that good. I'm Joanna Rosenthal. I'm a holistic lifestyle coach helping women raise their vibration through connecting their mind, body, and spiritual bodies together. So this is Amber. Amber, feel free.
Hi, my name is Amber. I'm a psychic medium and Reiki master.
So today we got like pretty excited about this one. It's definitely a newer conversation for both of us to have, but it's about the consciousness of water. And it's really cool because it is something that isn't necessarily like the most mainstream topic, but when we were talking a little bit more about all of the awesome things that we could go into, consciousness of water definitely floated to the top, pun intended, because, you know, it is part of almost everything along with light. And what purpose does it serve other than the fact that it could hydrate and you know, plants and hydrate us? I think we're pretty pumped about this one. For me, the reason why I find it very imperative that people really lean into this concept is because, you know, in terms of statistics, you can read up on this anywhere that you go out into the desert essentially, and let's say you are without food or water. If you are without food, you can go 40 days entirely off of water and survive. Whereas if you are without water and you only have food, and let's say it's like, you know, packaged food, 3 days max is how long you can live. And it has to do with the fact that 70% of us is made up of water. And then we kind of went into a little bit more of this earlier, but 70% of water is made up of us, but it's also made up of like everything that hosts consciousness. And then we also started talking a little bit about the food industry and how layered it is. And if you know that there's different like solid food grades, there's gotta be water grades out there that might not be, again, in mainstream conversation. So we thought we're gonna save this towards the end, maybe. I feel like it's gonna be a fun little like finale project to do, but Amber's gonna tap into different brands and see how alive the water is and what purpose each of them might serve. And we can also talk about different ways to like essentially like energize the water so it's fueling us in the best way possible. So Amber, do you want to get into just a little bit about like your recent findings when we were talking about this?
Which ones?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Maybe we can get into a little bit more about, you know, you said that you were just starting to lean into this since it is a newer concept, and what physicists are essentially talking about when it comes to water mixed with quantum theory and how that can dictate our blueprint. That was really cool.
So, this I actually studied a while ago. Well, specifically like with the way physics views like our current universe right now. If we start at Einstein, for example, and his space-time theory and all that stuff, I feel like that's the current state that we're in, but there's so much more that's come after that that's not as kind of mainstream, I guess. It's definitely developed into this hologram theory where everything is essentially 2D and basically like a hologram. When you have a 2D image that is put into a laser, it will disperse everything to make it look three-dimensional, but it's all a hologram. So that's one theory of what our reality is. And just this is kind of like a side note, but whenever I viewed parallel universes, I always saw them as like a sheet, you know?
Oh,
so
wow.
I thought that was very interesting. That has kind of developed into this concept of there being a blueprint and that everything essentially responds to this greater blueprint, and all of the, I guess, energy waves within that are essentially probability waves. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's a probability of an event. So we are here, we are put together because there was a probability of event. If there's if somebody has a relationship, there's a probability of event. So everything from objects to people to emotions to I don't know, whatever. Everything is a probability of an event. So they're all just as real as the next one, even though they're not all tangible. And then this kind of keeps going into there being multiple layers of reality and all that good stuff. So what I thought was really interesting is because water makes up, it's a huge part of consciousness. It's essentially like argued that water is in itself consciousness. So if we have water, then we are conscious. So I thought it was really interesting how, because that is the case, and these consciousnesses inside the water can kind of communicate with each other, not verbally, like just if you're next to somebody, the frequency of your water chemistry will react to somebody else's. I feel like that's almost mirroring this idea of how the universe is built up. And it was new to me to kind of see it as water, because I was always like, oh, energy. But I was like, wait a second, is it water? Is water the answer? I thought that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Wait, I actually want to divert a tiny bit and talk about the blueprint with consciousness and everything being a little bit of a probability. Now that has to also do with like your free will and the probable events that have to go along with, again, free will, the energy around you, whatever immediate decisions that you're making, and the support system and environment. So with all of that in mind, you as you come down in your vessel, you have this greater blueprint, though, with, to my understanding, it's these bigger beats that you will inevitably hit. It's how you get there that is okay. So there are probable events that will always lead you to these bigger beats in your life.
Yeah, I feel like, though, because these bigger beats are essentially like contracts, and because we have free will, are still changeable. We can make a renegotiation essentially of our contract, so that can be kind of shifted. But because everything is interconnected, and I feel like this is where it gets really complex with like parallel dimensions and stuff like that, every probability is worked out in some reality. So whether it's this reality or a different parallel of it, whatever, every probability is worked out all like simultaneously at the same time,
Yes, yeah, I get that. we can also put a rain check on that one and maybe add that to our list of all of the things that we want to talk about. I'm so excited. Yeah, so that's so fascinating to me. So for me, what really did it in terms of enlightening my mind and body with the concept of the consciousness of water is when I started studying holistic lifestyle coaching. And I was so set on this like traditional mentality of like, yeah, you have to hydrate, but like what really matters is like the quality of food. And then in our conversations in the first level of lifestyle coaching that I took, we were shown these models and these diaphragms of water and what you do when you speak kindly to it, similarly to plants. But it's like, if you speak kindly to water, the structure in the water can create this beautiful crystal. And if you speak poorly to water, it will break it down. So similar to how we respond to other people, like, and how we interact with everything that has water in it, it will change the way that we are. And then again, like if you even look at like dead water, for example, and there is dead water, useless water, it will dehydrate you and will inevitably make you more depressed or feel more in a state of like fight or flight, because you are not feeding your organs and your blood the way that it is requiring it. With that in mind, I found that this study was really interesting, like that you could form all these beautiful crystals and not one crystal is alike, meaning that just like each individual vessel that we are as humans, that every single piece of water is hosting its own information that it's either going to retain or give to you, depending on what you do with the water, how you interact with the water. So I thought that was really cool. And then the other thing that I found that was really cool was if you are even like 1% dehydrated, your body like inflames in terms of your organs. And that's what your body's barometer for emotion is. And so it's really important to intuitively start to understand when your body is thirsty versus hungry. And just the sensation of thirst doesn't necessarily mean that you are genuinely thirsty. It's really being able to understand how to satiate your body. And that takes a lot of time and patience to listen to that. But I want to get into a little bit more about what we mean in terms of the fact that, yeah, you can grade food and you can also grade water, but grading water isn't talked about widely. And again, there are many theories that we could get into about it, but I just want to share with people why it's so important and what they can do to really help themselves when it comes to satiating their body, because the quality of water will ultimately dictate the quality, again, amongst many other things, but this is like the big thing. The quality of water would dictate the quality of your life.
I actually just read about this study that was done yesterday. Well, it wasn't done yesterday. I read about it yesterday. But they had given this woman dead water, and they took a sample of her blood. And they found that the makeup of her blood was beginning to assimilate and essentially be chemically affected by the frequency of this dead water. It's something that they still don't understand, because it was so sudden, it made such a big difference. But I don't remember, there were like certain things present that could eventually lead to like diabetes or like weird random ailments, essentially. And they gave her pure structured water, and just as immediately all of those little things that had been there began to go away as her blood reassimilated to the high frequency of the water. So I feel like that's a very profound example of how much that does affect us. And to kind of go on that too, they were talking about how the invention of hydrogen bombs are very potent to us because it affects water. When a hydrogen bomb goes off, the water supply in a huge radius will be affected. And that includes the in in our bodies. So when there is a hydrogen bomb that has gone off in an area, the amount of suicide rates increases exponentially because the water chemistry in our bodies becomes dead and heavy, and we lose essentially our will to live, which is very also interesting at how much like the frequency of water can fully affect you.
I got goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's crazy. Even with the way like growing plants, if you grow apples with pure structured water versus dead water, the fruit is so much like bigger and juicier and like,
Oh my gosh. It just witnessing that firsthand, like you can go, and that's the, and that goes into the grading of it's a small factor with the grading of organic versus conventional foods, but you go to a biodynamic farm, because that's even one grade above an organic farm, and like the fruit doesn't even look like traditional fruit, because it's just made in literally the most, it's sad, it's like the unconventional but conventional way. Like it should be the way that it's all done, and you're doing it through the natural seeds, not certified organic or anything. It is literally the pure seed of whatever fruit, vegetable you're making, and the taste is, you can't even compare. It's incomparable. Like it's you just feel it in your body. You feel your soul kind of revving up again. You're like, I'm getting life.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And I think it's playing, sorry, my cat is like all lovey-dovey right now.
I love it.
It's also playing into this concept of we're all connected. Just basing it off of water, the frequency of the water in your area directly affects you. Your water chemistry will directly affect somebody else. They have done studies where they have done brain scans of two people in different countries trying to communicate telepathically, and their brains, the water in their brains will begin to reflect the same structure, like the same area of their brains will be I guess active, which is also very fascinating. So I almost feel like it's this antenna that we can use. I feel like there's so much power in it that we don't like use or we aren't aware of,
And it's no coincidence too. I mean, you look at even like Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s lawsuits against what certain like large powers have done to suppress the human power through water. And that's, you know, unfortunately it's been in tap water before, like things, certain additives have been in tap water. And he's won his suits against, again, large powers, and there's no coincidence that this is happening, and people are becoming more aware of what they can do to create a life that they really love through simple modalities like having good quality water. And it's interesting because people tend to go for things that they can buy and purchase that are in bulk, and that's easier, but those things are cheaper because they're slowly working against us. And we have the ability to take these and rev them up in order to give ourselves more light and life. But it's being aware of how to go about it. That is the first step. And just to add a little bit more to what you were saying too about like being worlds apart and tapping into another person's mind through telepathy and everything, it's kind of reminiscent, you know, while I don't know if it has anything to do with it, I'm sure it does, but Einstein's law of attraction, where you know, you can take one cell and take apart the protons, electrons, and neutrons and move them miles and miles apart, and you move the proton a certain degree, rotate it, and then the electron also is going to rotate too, because it's always, we are in perfect harmony at all times, and that stretch doesn't take away from the connection that it has. It's just a little bit more distant than the traditional sense.
And this is just kind of tying into other things, but a lot of people are confused as to the, I guess, concept behind like distance Reiki or distance house cleansings, any kind of distant work, but energy completely transcends like space and time. You know, it's will still affect things regardless of the distance because they're still connected, you know?
Yeah.
Just a side tidbit.
Yeah. It's something that, because it's not tangible, people tend to, or visible, or, you know, to the human senses, it's a, you know, a larger, more ethereal concept, obviously, but it's true, because everything is energy. Everything is a light source. And we were trying to figure this out too, that, you know, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg scenario, where it was like, well, what's more, what can you live without, or what can survive longer, or what is the baseline for it all? And I feel like it comes down to, it's like absolutely light, right? Light is that frequency that's within us all, and everything, right? It's dead or alive, but water is like that consciousness behind everything, to a certain extent. Right?
I wonder if maybe because even sunlight is very effective. Well, if I was going to say it's very effective at grounding us, but it could be because we're mostly water and it balances out water structure. But what I'm getting, I don't know if this is correct, but the vibration or the frequency of light waves, essentially, I mean, it's like if you're cleansing something with a tuning fork or something like that. You know, it has a specific frequency that will come that will affect the water, and it will kind of restructure it, which is probably why it also kind of grounds us and recenters us, you know, because the frequency is so pure.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So I feel like this would be a lot of fun to tap into a little bit more, but again, everybody has the capability of going out and getting any kind of water, right? But there's a reason why some waters are sold in mass and some are a little bit more expensive. And that's for another date, maybe. Something that I had learned in my class is that there are different brands that you can get on the shelf that have the perception and branding that it might be good for you, but it might also dehydrate you. And what that has to do with is, just for people to understand the science behind it, is our bloodstream at a state of neutral is at a pH level of 7. And we have this pH scale of like 0 to 14, I believe. Oh goodness, I'm like totally drawing a blank. 15, 14. And that has to do with the level of acidity or the level of alkaline that's in the water. And when you are really low on the pH scale, in order to bring it back up to a higher number, you put some minerals and vitamins essentially into the water, and you do that by alkalizing it. And then the other way around, you can create a little bit more acidity in water if it's too alkalized, and that requires perhaps, you know, going in and getting like lime or lemon and just neutralizing it a little bit. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily easy to tell whether or not a water is one or the extreme just by taking a swig of water. However, there are telltale signs, and the telltale signs, when you don't necessarily know the branding or what to look out for, is how quickly after you drink the water you go and you urinate. And generally speaking, the rule of thumb is you're going to want to urinate about, like, a healthy person will urinate about like every 2 to 3 hours, and it's going to look like, if it's good hydration level, like a pale yellow. It's not clear, because you want your body to look like it's actually detoxing a little bit. To add to that, you also want to make sure that you're having about, and this is again a general rule of thumb that a lot of people know, but they are, you know, for whatever reason tend to neglect, is 50% of your body weight in fluid ounces of water, and body weight in pounds is the general rule of thumb for how much you should be having to be satiated. With that all tied together, you want to be able to make sure that you're doing this without your food, because you want to be able to hydrate your organs separately, and then understand whether or not your body is hungry or thirsty. And that skill set develops over time when you really understand how satiated you are with thirst versus how satiated you are with hunger. So with the grading of water, I figured that we could do this fun little experiment that we just superficially talked about at my first course, but I thought it would be so much fun to talk about, because you can channel water from afar, just like Reiki and all of that good stuff. You could channel water from afar, and we could tap into different brands so people are aware what they should be going out for, and not necessarily tap. You know, it's about going out and getting good quality water that works for your body. So why don't we try doing, I pulled out like a couple, I only have a couple here. Again, like, I was going to go and grab some bottles, but I was like, let's not. So at this place that I am at right now, we had, they had some Poland Spring bottles. And then they also had, I brought this with me. I brought Mountain Valley, which I am like obsessed with. It's a spring water. But if you want to tap into, I think it froze a little bit. If you want to tap into Poland,
it did. Okay, you're back. I'm okay.
Is it good?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah. I think I'm okay.
I don't know if I'll be able to tell the pH level essentially, but I will be able to tell you how it feels and how it could like assist your body.
Oh, perfect. That's cool. Because also, just so you guys know, while everybody has, or most people have, a pH level of 7, which is the neutral level, not everybody is built the same way. Like, there are some people who are trying to heal their bodies. Let's say there's a lot of swelling going on, and they are on this higher level of acidity, right? So as a result, they might need a higher alkaline level water to neutralize their bloodstream, or the other way around, right? So it's still person dependent. However, for the most part, you want to be at a level of 7. So just in terms of the consciousness of water, I think it's going to be a fun game so people can understand that not all water is created equal. So I'm so excited to try this. Let's do Poland Spring first.
Okay, so immediately I'm feeling almost kind of lethargic. I feel like there is some energy behind it, but it is very like half asleep. You know, it feels I feel like it just feels very gentle. I feel like it kind of gets the job done. Essentially, it will hydrate you somewhat, but I feel like the amount that needs to be taken in order to reach a proper set or a proper state of hydration is a lot more than it needs to be. I feel like there's definitely potential there. I feel like just by recharging the water, you know, I feel like that will help a lot. I feel like if you were to recharge it, it'd be like a good 8 out of 10 on like the list, but by itself, I'd say maybe like a 6.
So that's funny that you say that, because I, again, like, so I've been, just so for context for people, and maybe why it might be a little bit choppy as we post this, the reason why is because we were impacted in my area by Hurricane Isaiah, and I am staying at my aunt's. But the reason why I first brought up Poland Spring is because that's the water that is here. And I noticed that when I didn't charge it with anything, and what that means is, again, revitalizing it with some sort of activated mineral, and yeah, and that could be anything that just gives it a little bit more life. And so what I do, and what I was taught to do, and it works beautifully, is literally you get like some sort of salt. So I have this, I brought this with me from my home because I was like, I know that I'm gonna need some life in my water. So literally so literally what I've been doing is putting just a sprinkle of that, because it actually, I felt such a difference. I was getting a headache initially. So when what I assume that you're getting is that it's definitely lower on the pH level, and it has to have a little bit more alkaline in it in order to absorb in your body, so your body can feel charged.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. This is so cool. All right. So how about we do, I'm trying to think of another really popular one. Why don't we do Essentia?
Oh, I've never even heard of that. Okay, so tapping into it, I don't feel good. So I don't feel like that's a good sign. uh, yeah, I don't necessarily feel very good. I feel like it's doing so minimal. It's like just getting by. Like I feel like it's just scraping what it should be doing, you know, that it's not like, I feel like my organs are literally like suffocating.
So Essentia promotes itself as a more alkalized water with a pH level, I believe, of 8.5. It's either 8.5 or 9.5. I would have to go to the bottle and look. It's for everybody that's kind of curious, it's the brand that's like, it's a black label with a little red in it, but the label,
Oh yeah.
right? And the word Essentia is white. And I've done a little bit of that pH level testing on it. I didn't want to say it before you did it. And it is like, it's a load of, you know what?
Yeah, no, it does not feel good.
I didn't want to say it before. I was like, I hope that like our studies have synced up in some way. Yeah, it's a load of, you know what? It doesn't work for the body. It will make you feel a little sick because it's just off in the pH level. And it's like, I think that what they do to it is they've done a lot of oxidation to it. So it's like, it's dehydrating you. Water can dehydrate you. I want to emphasize that. If it doesn't have the right amount of nutrients and vitamins and minerals in it, your body isn't processing it. It's just, you're flushing it out, and it's serving zero purpose. That's dead water. So Essentia might be marketed as something that's alkalized, but it's, until you test it yourself, you're not gonna, you can't always judge a book by its cover. So yeah, so that was cool. I'm glad that was how about we go into Fiji?
Fiji. Okay. Okay, so Fiji, it's kind of interesting because I feel like there's a duality to it almost. I feel like on one part of it, it's very like silky, and I feel like there's like, it has a lot of substance in it, but on the other side too, it's just not, I feel like the quality or the frequency of it the frequency of it does not match the amount of substance in it, if that makes sense. So I feel like it's like kind of, there's like this imbalance, which then kind of brings it down a little bit. I feel like it has good potential, but if you even just like let it sit in sunlight or charge it somehow just naturally, I feel like that'll allow it to kind of raise up a little bit better so that your body can process it properly.
Can we get into a little bit, because I didn't want to, I didn't want to yet, but that was a fun, I like, this is a perfect transition, actually. Charging water there are many ways. One is like putting, again, the salt and minerals into the water, literally, and you don't, again, it's water dependent, depending on how much, you would start to know naturally how much you sprinkle in. But can we get into how sun connects to charging water? And that, we talked about a little bit with the light meets water, but just by virtue of laying it outside, how does that connect to charging water?
I mean, I'm not completely sure. I'm just assuming because light has such a pure frequency that balances it so much, you know. I'm assuming that the vibration of it kind of allows it to regenerate, which allows the structure to just kind of revive, you know. So it's like bringing something back to life, essentially.
Mm-hmm. That's a big part of it. When we lay water outside, you're, again, like, sunlight provides a lot of natural vitamins into the water or into anything, right? Like if you lay outside, you're getting a lot of vitamin D, but beyond just getting vitamin D, you're exposing your body to the oxygen and the microbiome around you. So what's happening is, between you charging it with the sunlight, you're also exposing it, even if it's in the glass jar, to all of the elements that are around it, whether it be rocks or everything. And by the way, if you are charging your water and you're keeping your water, it is so much better to have it in glass than plastic. Plastic has this capability of lowering the vibration of water, for many reasons. Like, it's the chemical makeup of plastic versus the chemical makeup of glass. And I wonder, going back to Fiji for a quick second, I don't know if you can tap into this. I wonder if that duality has to do with the quality of the water as they're picking it up, like in or putting it into the bottle, right, is good, versus the actual shipment process. Like, I wonder if
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because I feel like there is such a high potential there, but there's something there that's almost like tainting that frequency, and that totally makes sense. It's just the process of like being around and in heavier frequency like things. Also, going back to the concept of how much we affect the frequency of water and vice versa, you know. So I feel like even the people around the water, like if it's in a factory, what are those people going through, you know? That can also make a big impact on the purity of the water, because everything is interconnected and water communicates with itself.
This is something that I've always been a huge proponent of. Listen, you can afford what you can afford, right? You have accessibility to things that you have accessibility to. But to consider that the less that there is between the growing process of whatever the food or the accessibility to the water is, to you receiving it, however much you can eliminate the middlemen, you're better off, because again, energy has such a profound impact on the quality of the life force within anything. And so the more people that handle it, the more conflicted the sensations are within whatever you are about to consume, whether it be you're consuming through your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and digesting it in whatever capacity you are. That's really interesting too. So that's a big reason why, you know, going through the holistic lifestyle program that I went through, they're always like, if you have accessibility to spring water near you, get it that way and filter it that way, and then charge it that way, because you are resourcing your environment. So let's get into the spring water, for example. This one is Mountain Valley spring water. So if you want to do that.
It actually feels great. It feels really good. I would give it a 9 out of 10. So I feel like 10 would be like if you're drinking from like a source that's just below it. No, I feel like I feel, just even tapping into it, I feel like I can breathe. I feel good. I feel invigorated. It feels great.
You see, I know what I'm talking about, you guys. I know what I'm doing. I'm just kidding. No, but yeah, this water is really good. And for people who are really curious a little bit more, if you have good quality water around you and you're outsourcing it, you will always see that they have the nutrition labeled on here and what you're going to be able to get. And you can see that the pH level here is 7.3 to 7.7. You have magnesium, a solid level of magnesium, potassium, calcium, and then a ton of other dissolved contents in it, but it's pure. It's pure because it's straight from the spring source. So getting into what we were talking about a little bit more, can you share a little bit about the consciousness of like what you can do to allow your body to absorb and process it?
So going back to this idea that water essentially assimilates to whatever other kind of water is interacting with it, if you say something kind to it, it will change the structure of the water. If you listen to certain music, it will change the structure of the water. Even just saying, thank you, water, I love you, or something, that will change the structure of the water. And I feel like, and then too, it'll change the structure of the water into your body, and everything will kind of assimilate to that higher vibration of gratitude and love. It makes such a difference. What's interesting too is kind of looking at this concept of holy water. This I found out yesterday too, which I thought was really interesting. When you pray, no matter the religion, doesn't matter on the language, just if you are praying with a loving intention, the frequency of the prayer is 8 hertz. 8 hertz is also the frequency of the electromagnetic field, which also essentially balances the water. That's another way of balancing the water, is being able to get it to the frequency of the electromagnetic field. So even just praying over the water makes a huge impact of the purity of it. I'm not religious by any means, but it's kind of making me reconsider this concept of praying before a meal, because you're recharging your food and you're thanking it, and it changes the structure of everything.
That's actually, it was funny because when I was first learning these concepts, I was, I was frustrated because I felt when I was doing so many changes in my life that I was losing control over things that were habitual to not just me, but also people who I was and still am close to. And it created this kind of black sheep mentality. How am I going to be able to socialize with people if I can't go out to eat or enjoy the company? Because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking oh my God, the quality of everything around us, my whole world is flipped upside down. What am I going to do? Right? So I didn't know what, I was literally I felt like a lost soul being well, I don't want to eat this because it's going to, it's going to do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to drink this because it's going to do X, Y, and Z. And I realized that I actually had a couple conversations about it, and I realized that the expression of gratitude alone allows your body to connect to the food and water in such a different way, and when you really feel gratitude towards something, and that's the same frequency, if I'm not mistaken, as the power of prayer. And then and because it's love at the end of the day, and that's all that ultimately we came down to remember. And when you are able to, your hands are healers, which is all about Reiki as well. When you're able to understand that your hands can charge the food that you have, and you even if you take 30 seconds to hold the water or raise your hands above the food, you are literally emitting a charge to whatever food or water you are having. It sounds too simple to be true, but all it takes is to be gracious. And when I learned that, I also recognized that, my body can tolerate this stuff. So I wasn't 100 or nothing in my life when it comes to diet and water and everything. I'm actually of the nature of being 80% to 20%, and then enjoying my time with people who might not necessarily think the same way I think, because we make up one blip in a large consciousness.
Yeah.
And if we seclude ourselves from the exposure of everything else that life has to offer, then we're also bringing that mentality with everything that we do. So it's almost like, go out there and enjoy, but make sure that most of the time you're doing things with conscious intentions and good quality intentions. And that also means fueling your body most of the time, if not all of the time, with this good quality, high vibe stuff. I'm just going to leave that there. But yeah, so I feel like that's really, it's just like a really powerful lesson to be had. So the moral of the story is that no matter where you are on the water scale, it's always about bringing it back to being grateful for whatever you have accessibility to, number one, and number two, being aware of the quality. And if you can get good quality locally, then go for it. I know what else I wanted to talk about. One more thing too. It's like the water hosts memory. And it's like one of the biggest power sources for memory. Since water hosts a lot of memory, can we get into that a little bit more?
Yeah, that I actually don't know too much about. If you start, I can finish it maybe.
Sure, let's do it. Just for example, water has been used in a lot of like computer science labs to be the source of a memory bank for computers, right? It's more powerful than computers. Even one molecular combination of water retains a memory due to the structure that will build upon a larger structure because it's all cohesive, right? It all works together. It's fluid and it can be separate, but it's also fluid and works as one larger unit. So when you take these structures and you build it, you're building a large memory bank. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So water essentially is feeding not just information to you, but it's also helping energize whatever memory you have. So it's a combination of the two. And the water to you is being fed by, again, where it's being sourced from, but also who else is sharing this. Because the minute that somebody's hands go on it, because it's a charge, it's going to absorb some of that memory, and it hosts, again, so much memory. So if you are drinking low vibe water, the decisions that are consequential to that are low vibe. If you are drinking higher vibrational water, the decision that you're going to make as a result of that are higher vibe and more in alignment with your soul's mission, not your ego mission.
Yeah, no, I feel like that kind of goes with the idea of the hydrogen bomb too. You know, when the water gets so tainted, it affects us. The water itself is dead and has like no will to live essentially. And so we reflect that, and then suicide rates grow and stuff like that. You know, it's this idea that everything is interconnected and energy honestly just things need to be recharged. You know, when it gets so convoluted, there's a heaviness to that brings us down, and it brings everything down. It brings our will down, it brings our gratitude down, everything. Our way of life just becomes so much heavier and just unfulfilling, you know. And that's the same with what you're putting in your body. If you put in processed foods, that's so much heavier. It's not pure. There's this heaviness, and your way of life will be not as wonderful as somebody that chooses to eat pure, you know. Our body, it's our vessel. It's almost like a community, you know. There's a vibrational energetic frequency to a carrot. You know, so eating a nice carrot from your garden, you know, will fuel your body. You're sharing an experience with the carrot, and the carrot will help you, instead of having this like angry carrot, like, oh, screw you, and like, you know, you put it in there, you won't feel good.
Screw you. Damn it. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, and the funny thing too is people until they experience this themselves, it's a very out there concept, but the food that you put in your body will speak to you. Depending on your channels, you're going to find that like it's a feeling that you have, and suddenly you're attracted to a certain type of food right off the bat, or you're going to hear something coming from a plant or like an animal product or whatever it is. You're going to find that somehow food is going to be speaking to you as to how you are intended to fuel your body. It's a very interesting concept, but it happens when you understand intuitively what you're lacking and what you need more of, or what you have, and your body's like, I just want all of that right now, you know. And that changes based off of the minutes, seasons, years in your life, whatever it is. There's not one diet that permanently lasts in our bodies. And that's why that's why what I do and why I care so deeply about like sharing this knowledge and coaching people is because I want people to really understand what their body as an individual level is reporting back to them. Because if they don't understand that, then they're going to what might be working for them right in this very moment might not be working for them a month or 2 years down the line. You have to intuitively start to understand what your body wants, and it's not this is not a band-aid approach, right? So going back to the information, let's say a carrot or a water will give you, it's like, why is it so important to do something or to take something local beyond just the fact that there's the shipment and the consciousness of that? Yeah. Like, why is it important to eat from your own environment?
Okay, I'm gonna kind of like veer and then come back.
Yeah.
So going back to this idea in physics of this multidimensional reality, it kind of coincides with the idea of our chakra system. And each chakra we have is essentially a reality of its own. It's a whole, it's a world as real as ours, essentially, but a little bit different because it's not necessarily physical. So we can be communicating with people in a higher frequency reality. So like if you're at a restaurant or something and you feel some kind of connection with somebody like over there, but you're not sure why, but there's this like weird energy thing going on in a higher reality of our energy body, we are actually having an interaction with them. And I feel like it's kind of like going back with this idea of water, because water reacts and we are so built of water. I almost feel like that's also, I don't know, it just kind of coincides with that. But then that being the case too, if we're like pulling this back to science, obviously scientifically, if we eat bad things, it does bad stuff to our body. But I feel like we tend to think of things from like the bottom up. So it's like what I eat, my body's not doing good. And like, you know, and then we like it goes from physical to spiritual, where it's actually the other way around. Our energy bodies will kind of all collect down here. So the food, the frequency of the food we are intaking will then affect the physical makeup of things, which will physically affect our physical makeup. So that being said, having something in your environment that is very pure, you are essentially interacting with like, I guess like Mother Nature, you know, it's like it's a pure connection you're making. If you think about it, people that are into crystals, one of the first things you're supposed to do when you bring a crystal home is cleanse it, because everybody at that store, their energy, everybody's that touched it, you know, that energy is locked into that crystal. It's the same thing with anything else. We are all here together. There's like energy everywhere. Everything is energy. Every event is energy. You know, there's all this stuff going on. So the more people that are interacting with one thing, the heavier it's going to be, the more like convoluted and like weird stuff that's going to be on it, you know? Oh, wait.
You're back.
Okay, there we go. So, I mean, though it is preferable, just like a crystal, I feel like at the very least, if you are unable to have access to high quality things, at least kind of recharge it, whether it be in the sun or even just like saying a prayer over it or just sending it some gratitude or something. I feel like that makes such a difference in the frequency so that you can reach a pure state, so that you can actually have it's like a relationship with the food in your body, you know, instead of you're just like shoving things in your face because you need to survive, you know, it's like you're having a relationship and it's doing something for you. It's like becoming part of your bigger environment, you know.
100%, 100p. Yeah, no, that's great. And then just to feed off of that a little bit more, when you are ingesting things from your environment, what you're getting essentially is a feedback about the quality of your environment too. Let's say you are showing grace to everything and gratitude to anything that you're ingesting. So you are ingesting something in a higher vibe state, but suddenly like 20 minutes after you consume it, you feel a little off. No, even if you were in a high state, it's telling you that there's something about your environment that's off, because everything is so connected. So you have the power to understand that if you are in a high vibe state and then like something that you ingest in a high vibe state makes you feel a little something, that something environmentally or externally wasn't right. And then you could kind of retrace your footsteps if you want to, and determine what has to change, what's got to give in order to fulfill that void, for example, in your life.
Yeah. And I feel like going with that too, because I think for some people, if it's like the soil's, I don't know, dirty or something, then it's like, oh no, well, what am I going to do? I can't do anything about the soil. Intention is so important. And I think that's one of the biggest things that water teaches us is like sending it an intention literally changes the structure of it. Setting an intention that like your ground and soil is nice and clear and whatever, you know, that intention will change the makeup of everything in there and will attract more. It's this law of attraction kind of thing. I feel like intention is just the key to everything.
Totally is. That's unlocking something that is so powerful. Yes, it is that simple in theory, but it's so powerful because it's literally the mindset game, right? And while your mindset might have been conditioned to believe that we are always striving for something better, like striving for something better is accessible to everybody. So closing that gap and being like, no, I have access to it just through the power of intention. Like it's everything is at your fingertips. Everything's within your fingertips, right? Like you are powerful. You have so much more power, and that is what food and life sovereignty is really about. And even if you have a little and you practice a little each day, you're making a big difference in the long run.
Yeah. And even if you can't, like, even if it's not necessarily like tangible, you know, it's still working. As long as you have a very clear intention, the work is being done, whether you can see it or not.
I love that. Yeah, this was so much fun. I feel like that covers basically everything in terms of the consciousness of water that I can think of. We talked about some fun grading systems and what to look out for. And yeah. Oh, one more thing. You guys, if you have tap water is definitely like something that you should always kind of check in with, because you don't know what is being said out loud to you and what you assume is going to be promoted in the water versus what isn't. So it's always worth doing your own due diligence and checking. And you can go into a store and just get a pH tester for one. The second thing that you can do is get a filter. And if you really want to go all in, you can get like a Kangen water filter. Have you ever heard of that? So they're like these like boxes. I don't have it. It's a few $100s, but it's worth it. And I'm actually thinking of investing in it because you can actually go from like complete acidic water to total alkaline depending on the level. And it's a filter. And this box essentially has the power, like you can clean your house. You can totally sterilize your house by doing this. You can sterilize you can help clean out in the most natural way and purest way, all of the imbalances in your like lung biome that you need to clear out. Like let's say you have bacteria that is just off and making you feel lower vibration or sick or something, just by virtue of like fixing the temperature in the water, you can literally like help heal your lung biome, for example.
That's great.
It's so cool. Just one more tidbit that I wanted to share, because I felt like so many people just use tap water and they use it passively, and to just be more conscious of like, okay, if you're not feeling so well, it might have to do with something that's not shared outwardly in terms of the quality that you're getting that way. So yeah, but I feel like that was fun. I feel like that covered a lot of things. If you guys have any questions in terms of the consciousness and the vibration and what you can do, feel free to reach out to Amber. If you have any questions about the nutritional aspect or the physical things that you can potentially do for water, feel free to reach out to me. I'll post some information below, and Amber, I'm sure you're going to do the same. But until next time.